Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. On today's episode, we're getting Overkill ready to start and drive, working on the plumbing, wiring, steering, and interior. So be sure to stick around. If you want to come see my 67 Corvette Overkill, come to Corvettes at Carlisle. I should be there Thursday to Saturday. I haven't given you guys a tour of my house yet, so over here in the kitchen, I keep some of my gauge clusters. So in here, I have the gauge cluster for my 67. What better place to keep it? And then right next door, we have the full wiring harness. So I have the main harness, the bulb kit, and then a whole bunch of doodads for it, you know, all the switches and ignition sticks, all that stuff. So now I gotta take the bulbs, put them in the harness, plug the harness into the gauge cluster, put all the switches and stuff in the cluster, and then we can get this cluster ready to go in Overkill. So I have the gauge cluster mostly assembled. I forgot to order the little nut for the headlight switch, so I have to get that before I can put that in. Other than that, it's all assembled, ready to go. All the bulbs are plugged into the harness, all the connectors are plugged in, got the ignition switch in, so I'll be able to start this thing up, and all the other switches. They make it pretty simple to install the harness. You just follow the directions in here, and then if you get the correct bulb kit, it tells you which bulb goes where. I ended up having to strip the dash because I was painting on it and it was just cracking, so that wasn't working out. But now this thing is pretty much ready to be dyed red, and I have still been putting different coats of paint on the back, trying to blend that together, and I think I found a good compromise. Since I couldn't get this dye quickly in a big quart, I decided to steal the tip off of my Eastwood 2K paint, and this has more of a wider fan rather than just a little cone. So this actually helped blend the paint a lot. So now I'm going to jump into my steering column. So instead of spending a bunch of money on a correct steering column, I went and got a Flaming River steering column for a Corvette. I need to knock these pins out, take the spline section out, and I'm just going to use the double D shaft with a bunch of Speedway hardware to connect it to the rack and pinion on the chassis. But that's not all the custom things. I really don't like the billet knobs and stuff these come with, so I'm going to put all OEM knobs like flasher, tilt and telly knobs. But I also really like the 65/6 telescopic steering column look. I really like this horn button and the adjustment knob here. Now this won't be functional, but what I want to do is clone that look. So made some good progress here. I have the top of the column painted red, the bottom half painted black. It's just the way they did it in the factory. Just spent a lot of time trying to get the radiator to fit, as well as the fan shroud. I had to put a little notch in the frame down there, so that way it would clear the tank on the side of the radiator. And I had to delete the bottom of the fan shroud to clear the rack. But the manual fan clears. I made sure that clutch fan actually cleared and didn't hit anything. Yesterday I got the radiator, fan shroud in, and I started mocking up the alternator. It's going to be really close having the power steering pump and the alternator on the same side. I want to do that because I want to have AC on this side eventually. I also got the dash bolted, riveted, and glued in, so that thing turned out good. It's nice and solid. I have all my headlight stuff laid out. I don't have motors yet, but I have buckets and all the stuff to at least put headlights in the car. So I'm just going to put the headlights in. I have one of my favorite go-to assembly books here, which everybody asks. It's the Paragon catalog. It's a really nice quick reference book with good diagrams. So that's one of my favorites. Just to open up, it's really easy to find the page, a lot easier than the assembly manual. So now I have both headlights installed, and this thing is starting to have a face. They both fit and operate well. So later I will put the wiring harness through here, and then once I get the rest of the car wired, I'll go ahead and put the bulbs and all the other little things in it. But they're adjusted pretty well. I think I need to actually adjust them so they rock back a little further. Next up on the list is to put the seats together. So I have some used seats, some new backs, and some used hockey sticks. Now these seats I actually got at Corvettes at Carlisle last year. They're 67 seats. Obviously they're originally red. And I got them from a family friend who just so happened to drop them off in our spot and ask if we could sell them for him. And he wandered off. And in the meantime, I realized these are 67 seats and they are for a red interior car, which this is. So I jumped on them and I put the better of the two seats together, and I have that assembled just sitting in the car so I can get an idea on my seating position. I have the gauge cluster installed and the wiring just roughly thrown in. I set the steering column in to try to get an idea of the seating position, and the steering column needs to go the whole way forward in the dash just to have any arm length in there. So I have a universal joint here with two double D ends, and I have this double D shaft which I will slide in this tube of the column. I removed the part that Flaming River installed, which was just a splined unit. So I've removed that. I'm just going to use double D on both sides, and I have one down there at the bottom as well. So what I'm going to do is cut off a section of the shaft that I can put in the column. That way I can get my universal joint in here, and then I'm going to measure, figure out what length I need to connect that to that. So I've been busy working on wiring, getting everything finished up. I have the headlight bulbs in wired up, parking lights in, and I just need to drill the little hole for the parking light wire. I have both the engine harness and the dash harness run. We have gauges in. The steering's Wi-Fi right now because I am working on the steering shaft. So I took some of this double D shaft, a universal joint, to bend around the engine, and then I have another universal joint to go down to the rack and pinion. I drilled a little hole in here so that way this set screw will index into it and it will lock it in place. It won't come back out. And then these ones were just going to be clamp-on types, but they actually fit a little loose on the shaft, so I just decided to weld it and make it permanent. So I also drilled a hole in here, that way I can pound in a pin that'll lock it in place. And if you have one of these flaming river steering columns at home, you also need to remove on this collar this little tab on the top that will let this collar actually sit where it's supposed to, raise the column up a little bit, and then this foot will fit on your gauge cluster. I think they do that in case you have a 63 cluster, just to give you some flexibility. Had a nice emergency shipment come in from Speedway Motors. This guy apparently is hard to get right now, so I have this expansion tank. I'll get that mounted, get all the hoses in. So I have the wiring wrapped up on the car and I have the steering connected, so now when I turn the wheel, which you probably can't see, the wheels turn. So that's good. It was a little tight tolerances, but we got it to work. And I have the fuses in, so the gauge cluster's all hooked up the MSD box, deadheaded a couple wires. I took the front wheels off so I could drill a hole here for the parking light. I also changed the oil. And there is no gas in the car, and also there's no belts right now. I don't have any coolant in it. I just want to do a fire test here, so we're going to turn the battery on. So let's see what happens here. Well, the dome light turned on. That's a good sign. All right. Let's see. Do we have... Oh, we got headlights. Good headlight bulbage. We have parking lights. Parking lights. It's a good sign. Figured we wouldn't have a horn. That's fine. All right. Climb in here. Neutralis. All right, let's see if we can get it to turn over and build some oil pressure. All right, 60 pounds of oil pressure. That should be plenty to start it with. So we got quite a bit done in this video. Got the cooling system mostly installed, wiring installed, got the steering system for the manual side installed, got most of the interior in, sound deadening, put the seats together, painted the dash, got the dash in, steering column, did a steering column conversion. So now we just have the brakes to do. I have to make 2 lines that go from the master cylinder down to the frame, put all the brake lines from the frame to the calipers, bleed the brakes, get some belts that actually fit, and then make some lines for my remote reservoir power steering system. Get some hose clamps, dump some gas in it, this thing's ready to fire up. So we're getting close to being roadworthy. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I have a lot of work to do. So hopefully the next video you see, I'll be starting the car and potentially driving it down the road. And then right after that, it'll be going to Corvettes at Carlisle. So I got a lot of work to do, and I'll catch you guys later.